And in this video, guys, we're going to discuss and I'm going to teach you how to implement functions in our C program. So basically, guys, a C function is a self-contained block of statements that can be executed repeatedly whenever we need it. So if you think about it, it is just, a group of statements that we could call and we could use repeatedly within our C program. So in this particular video, guys, we're going to discuss the benefits of using the functions in C program. We will also discuss two types of functions in C. Also the parts of function, the function prototype, the function definition, and of course we're going to discuss also how to call a function inside our C program. And lastly, we will implement a basic program to illustrate the addition of two numbers using user-defined function. So if you're excited, guys, please make sure to watch the full video. You will learn more in this particular video tutorial. And by the way, guys, if you are new here in our YouTube channel and you like content about programming, so go ahead, make sure to subscribe and press the notification bell so you'll get updated whenever we have a new upload regarding different programmings or different topics. So we have topics Python, Java, JavaFX, C programming, and many other topics regarding programming. So now let's try to talk about the benefits of using function in C. So there are a lot of functions that we could associate in using function inside our C program. So the first one is modularity. So when we are using functions, it could provide modularity in our code. So it means that we could define different functions. We could readily call our functions, and we could call this particular function if we need it or we need to execute certain statements. And of course, guys, the function also provides reusable code, meaning it will save us a lot of space, and it could be, our code could be more readable by using this particular function feature. So that's readable or reusable code. And then in large programs, debugging and editing tasks is easy with the use of functions. So functions make it easy for us to implement our programs. So the program can be modularized into smaller parts. That's what I have said earlier, that we could develop a certain module inside our C program, and then we could call that particular module or statements or group of statements if we need in a particular situation. And the next one is separate function independently can be developed according to the needs. So for example, guys, we could group our statements depending on the need, or depending on the function or the purpose of that statement. So we could group that statements and place it inside our C function. So actually, guys, there are two types of functions in C. So the first one is, let me type it here, type of functions. We have the first one, built-in function. Okay, so built-in function, of course the system provided these functions and stored in the library. Therefore, it is called library functions. So we have, like, we are using scanf, printf, strc, py, strlwr, strcmp, strlen, strcat, and many more functions that are already available for us whenever we try to run a program. So from the previous tutorials, we have used the printf. So as you can see, this particular function, we did not implement this. The system provided it for us, the printf, and this particular function will let us display certain objects or statements that we want to display inside our C program. So to use these functions, you just need to include the appropriate C header file. So that's why we have here the include statement at the top of our program. So basically, we're including all the necessary function that we could use inside our C program. And of course, guys, the second type of method is what we call the user-defined functions. User-defined functions. Okay, so user-defined functions. These are the functions that are defined by the user at the time of writing the program. So that's basically us or the programmer that define the functions. Okay, and then of course the same with the built-in function. We could readily use this particular functions inside our C program. Now there are also parts of our function in C programming language. We have the function declaration. We also have the definition, and we also have the function call. So this is basically the actual flow of the function. We have the function declaration, and then we have the definition. We have, of course, the function call if you want to use that particular function. So we have here, for example, syntax for function declaration. So we could, this will be the function declaration. This is just an example, guys, on how you could declare a certain function. So the syntax for that is data type, and then function name, and then of course open and close parentheses, and then in here you can specify the parameter list, okay, or the variables that we want to use inside this particular function. So our example of that is like this: int, which is the data type, and of course addition, which is the name of our function. So addition, and then the return type is int, and then of course the list of parameters, and in this case we don't have any parameter in this particular function addition. So we also have the function definition. This is actually what the actual function would look like. So this will be function declaration, or I mean function definition. Okay, so we could the basic syntax to this is return type, and then function name, and then function arguments, and then curly braces. So it should include the close or open and close curly braces, and then inside here is the body of the function, or simply the statements that we want to execute inside this particular function. So whenever we want to call this function, this will be the statements that would be executed inside this particular function. So in order for us to call a function inside our C program, we just need to specify the method name, and of course we need to supply parameters if there are any, and we would also need to specify the return type of our function. So now let's try to implement a simple program that that could illustrate the addition of two numbers using user-defined function. So we have here the main function, right? And then in here, after the main, or after the closing curly brace of our main function, we could create our own function right here. Let me close this first so you can see better. So we could add a function here returning the total of two numbers. Okay, So we could declare it like this: int and then addition, open and close parentheses, and then open and close curly braces. And of course, guys, as I've said, this will be the body of our function. So in here we could um, define local variables. Okay, so local variables. So for example, we have int num1 equals 10, and then num2 equals 5. Okay, so these are local variables, meaning these are the variables that are declared and defined inside the addition method or function. Okay, so we could say here return and then num1 plus num2. Okay, so that's the statement that we want to execute whenever we try to call the addition method, or I mean function. So inside our main function, we could call this method addition. So we could declare a variable here, int answer, and then we could say answer equals and then the addition. So basically, whatever the return value of this addition method, it will be assigned into our answer variable. And of course, we could print or display this particular value. So we could say the total of two numbers is, and then the format specifier, which is, %d, and then the answer, which is the answer variable. Okay, so we could, build and run our application, and then we have here the output. The total of two numbers is 15. Okay, so that's how the function works. And as you can see here, we have defined our function with the statements inside our C function to return the total of the number 1 and number 2. And then inside our main function, we have declared the answer, and then the type is int, of course, because the int is should correspond to the return type of this particular function. And then answer equals the addition. And then the last thing that we did here is to display the total of two numbers. And in this case, 10 and 5, which makes it, the value or the output is 15. So we're going to learn how to use C function arguments or parameters inside our function. So from the previous tutorial, we have learned how to define and declare our function inside our C program. And of course, we have learned how to use the basic syntax to create a function and implemented a simple function that could add two numbers. Okay, so as I've said, guys, in this video, we're going to focus on the function arguments or function parameters. So while calling a function, the arguments can be passed to a function in two ways. So there are two ways on how we could pass the parameters or the arguments into the function. So the first one will be call by value, and the second one is call by reference. Okay, so in call by value way, the actual parameter is passed to a function, and then new memory area created for that particular passed parameters, and then it can be used only within that function. And the actual parameters cannot be modified in the call by value way of passing the argument into our function. While call by reference, so instead of copying a variable, an address is passed to a function as parameter, and then we could use the address operator, which is the ampersand symbol. I know you're already familiar with this. So address operator is used in the parameter of the called function, and of course the changes in the function reflect the change of the original values. So we could understand this better if we try to implement our function by, creating a simple project or simple application that could demonstrate the call by value or call by reference. So first, let's try to create a program that would pass the argument as, or it could call by value. So the first thing that we're going to need is, of course, uh, it's actually the same with the program, or I mean function that we have created from the previous tutorial, but the difference is that in this particular video we're going to use parameter or argument. So the first variable that we're going to declare here is the answer. So the type is int, and then we have the variable um, name num1, so the value is 5, and then int num2, and then the value is 10. Okay, and of course guys, we could declare the function. So for example, we could create the function right after this closing curly brace of our main function. So the first thing, of course, is the return type, and in this case int, and then the name of our function, which is addition, and we could say here int a and int b. Basically, it means that this particular function could accept two parameter, int b and int a. Okay, and then in here we could return the value or the total value of these two parameters, so a plus b. Okay, and of course guys, we could declare the function right here. So we could, add the function declaration here, function declaration. So you could say here int addition, and then this particular function is gonna take two parameters, int num1 and int num2. So as you can see here guys, this is only the function declaration, okay, and this is the function definition. Function definition. Again, this is function declaration, and function definition. So now we could try to call our function by value. So for example, we could say here answer, and then equals addition, which is the method or the function that we have created here, and then we could pass along the values of num1 and num2. Okay, so let me explain this first for you so it would be clearer for you. So we have here the parameter num1, num2. As I've said, in call by value, the actual parameters cannot be modified because num1 and num2 is, it won't change even if we, change the parameters here, the int a and b. So the value of num1 and num2 would not change even if we try to modify this int a and b inside our addition function. So the actual parameter is passed to a function, and then new memory will be created for our parameters int a and int b. Okay, and of course we could display here the result. So printf, and then of course the statement, the addition, or we could say the total of two numbers is, and then the format specifier %d, and then the variable answer. Okay, and then we could, clean and build our application, or build and run, and it should display the output something like this. The total of two numbers is 15. Okay, so you get the point. This is the calling of function by value. Okay, now if we want to try to call a function by reference, as I've said, we're going to use the ampersand symbol. So ampersand symbol, or it is the address operator, and we're going to use that in our parameter of the called function. So let's try to implement a function that could call by reference. And you should see by now how the call by reference and call by value is different. So the same thing, we're going to declare the method here. The return type is int, and then the name is addition, and then it's going to take two parameters with type int. Okay, and then we could also use this int answer, and then the same value, for example. And now guys, instead of just using this num1 and num2, we could add the address operator, the ampersand symbol, or the address operator in C programming. So basically guys, we're sending, or we're passing the address of this particular variable into our function. So whenever we change this value inside our function, it's going to reflect the value of our num1 and num2. Okay, so um, we have here the ampersand or address operator, and then we call the function right here, and then display the answer. And of course, we need to add the asterisk symbol for this variable here, or the argument, and then um, one for the other variable b. So this means that it is the operator that is used as a pointer to a variable. So it's going to point the address to that particular value of num1 or num2. So of course we need to add this also here, and of course for our variable num2. Okay, and then as I've said, if we want to change the value of num2 here inside our function, we could do that, and it's going to reflect the changes of this num2 and num1 variable. Okay, and then of course we could still use the asterisk symbol here, and let's try to run our program for now. So build and run, and it's going to answer, or it's going to the output this way. The total of two numbers is 15. Okay, so let's try to modify the num1 and num2. Okay, for example, inside this particular function, we're going to change the value of our variable a. So instead of 5, it's going to like maybe 6. Okay, so we could do that by using this particular um, variable argument. We could add here the um, variable a, and then we could say 6, then semicolon at the end, and we could try to display the value of our a. So the value of a, and then %d, and it should, the variable a correspond to the variable num1, right? So we could copy and paste this. So notice that num1 equals to 5 here. Okay, so let's see what's the output of this. So build and run our program. So as you can see, we have here the output. The total of two numbers is 16, and the value of a is 6. But as you can see here, a corresponds to the num1, right? Num1. So we have here num1 equals to 5. And then we change the value of num1 by using the reference of variable a, and then we set it to 6. That's why we're getting 6 here, and then the total of our addition is 6. Okay, so I think that's all there is to it, guys, for this tutorial. And if you have questions, please let me know in the comment section below. And again guys, thank you for watching and see you in the next video.